Let's grab a word now with Dan Chapman. He's an employment lawyer with Leathes in Norwich. Very good morning to you.
Morning, Nick.
Good morning. Great to see you. Thank you for coming in. OK, so what's your take on this then? Do you think that this is moving with the times and very important? Or actually, should employers reserve the right, to a certain extent, to be able to dictate how their employees look?
I'd agree with that latter point, Nick. I think that employers do need to have some rights to protect their brand. And I think the law in the United Kingdom, I'm certainly no expert on New Zealand law, but the law in the United Kingdom tries to reach a balance between the rights of the business to promote its brand and its professional reputation, but at the same time to recognise the individual rights of the employees. And it's about achieving a balance, in my view.
Yeah, OK. It's an interesting one because the one that we're picked on, of course, has got cultural links.
That's right.
The Maori people. And so you could understand at that point why it's quite sensitive. So how do you distinguish between people who've got a tattoo for faith reasons or cultural reasons and somebody who's got one just because they like that particular art form?
If I might give an example of a case in this country, it involved British Airways actually. It was an employee, an air hostess, who wore a Christian cross jewellery. The British Airways policy was that you cannot wear any visible jewellery whilst you're working on the plane. She brought a case against British Airways and was ultimately, via the European Court, successful on the basis that her jewellery was part of her religious beliefs. And so it's recognised that an employee can say, notwithstanding the policy, you need to make an exception for me because this jewellery or this tattoo is part of my religious beliefs or my racial beliefs. And an employer then has to decide whether they will make those exceptions on a justifiable case-by-case basis.
But then what is faith? I mean, we're now into a really difficult argument that somebody might subscribe to Catholicism or they may identify as Muslim or Sikh. But then somebody might also say, I follow the religion of Jedi, which is actually a distinguished religion, and therefore I feel that I need to be able to turn up to work with a lightsaber and, Darth Vader's hat on my head.
And you're absolutely right, Nick, and the courts are full of those sort of cases at the moment. People are trying to say that climate change is a religious or philosophical belief, vegetarianism is a religious or philosophical belief. And that is precisely why some employers, and it may be why Air New Zealand have dealt with it in this way, have decided let's just have a blanket policy now of allowing it rather than having to have so many exceptions and so many case-by-case justifications. So each employer has got to look at what their business really needs.
It's interesting, though, because where do you draw the line in terms of politics? Because somebody could say, look, I really want to have, I don't know, the logo of the Labour Party or the Conservative Party tattooed on my face, or probably more realistic, a contentious flag over a disputed territory. So at what point do you say that person's imagery could be seen as being provocative to those who believe something that's opposed to what that image stands for?
In that instance, I think an employer, certainly in this country, would be on safe ground to say that is not acceptable, because whilst you may have a belief in a particular political philosophy or anything of that like, it's not an essential part of that belief that you display it so visibly. That's different to a Maori who may have a tattoo or a religious piece of jewellery, and it's an essential part of your belief. And so I think in those cases an employer would be entitled to say that's going too far.
Yeah, I mean, it leads back to that famous case of somebody I think got a tattoo of a swastika, and then when they were dismissed tried to claim that they were going back to the ancient Hindu symbol, and the case ended up in court. Either way, this is going to keep you in business.
Absolutely. Good. All good for employment lawyers.
Well, actually, I think it's actually very important to get very good representation in this area because it is difficult. By the way, this will interest you, Dan. A YouGov survey found that 30% of adults, this is between 25 years and 39 years, have tattoos. So I guess, and that's increasing. So I guess this is something that employers are going to have to deal with on a more regular basis.
And absolutely. Putting the legal position to one side, we have to say to clients also, you've got to look at recruitment and retention. And in certain industries, it's all very well saying we're not going to allow this, but if it means that you'll be missing out on talent, that's no good for business. So you've got to be a modern employer, and you've got to also look at the bigger picture here.
And we've got another problem, consistency. If you have set that marker down, you've set the precedent, then of course you've got to stick by it. So you could say to somebody, I don't really like that person very much, want to get rid of them. They've got a tattoo of a thistle on their face, they're out the door. Somebody else comes in with a tattoo of rhododendron, who you quite value. They've also got to go out the door because it might be a different flower, it's still a tattoo on your face.
Absolutely right, and that's why it's so important to decide what your policy is as an employer and then to ensure that you apply it consistently.
safe ground is to say we accept everybody.
Possibly, but
Well, is that safe ground, actually? I'm not sure.
But if you take the example, if you're a 5-star hotel, you might reasonably not want your concierge having a skull and crossbones tattoo on his neck. Whereas the men and women that work in the kitchen, does it really matter if they've got a visible tattoo? And to recruit the best people in the kitchen, do you really need to have that policy? So I think you have to even look within your business at different policies and different parts of your business and understand what's important and what's not.
Great to see you, Dan. Thanks so much for coming in this morning at short notice. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Dan Chapman there, an employment lawyer with Leathes in Norwich. Over to you on this one, 0800 389 7321.